I have to say that I'm amused by the fact that people that know Giovanni obviously speak to the same themes without having coordinated in advance on what they were going to say. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the launch of Shaking the Skies. I can attest firsthand to the fact that this book genuinely illuminates the realities of the IATA Giovanni found, transformed, and left. It's a book both a business person or an aviation person or an airline person will thoroughly enjoy. It points a spotlight as well on a trait that I've noticed that true agents of change look at and deal with issues like an existing paradigm. In recent years, I've had the good fortune to be a founding investor in startup companies alongside true visionaries like David Neilman, Tony Fernandez, and most recently Steve Hazy. One absolutely fascinating characteristic they all have to their core is a total disinterest in what is not possible. Now, naturally, turning around and running a large industry body like IATA is not the same as starting a great new company. But this key attribute of disdain for what cannot be done is shared by Giovanni. In fact, as regards this feature, I do not believe he came with an on-off switch. But in my view, this trait, coupled with his drive and determination, have been key to Giovanni's success and is readily evident in Shaking the Skies. Also evident is the unbelievable energy expended by Giovanni as he tirelessly globetrotted pursuing change. In this quest, he was constantly on the road, which I'm not quite sure whether his lovely wife Elena, unquestionably a key feature in his success, and so often at his side at points around the world, was upset about or rejoiced at the opportunity to be able to relax in his absence. But it comes through clearly in his words. This wasn't about having a nice, high visibility job. This was about leading a crusade for change in an enormous but horribly underachieving industry, which, among other things, needed to learn to help itself by, as he coined, shouting politely. I remember my first IATA board meeting. It was PG, pre-Giovanni. Also probably appropriate in terms of the US nomenclature of a parental guidance movie, because IATA was in serious need of parental guidance. Thankfully, it was the only meeting without Giovanni, but I remember it as if it was yesterday, and it was surreal. We were at this board meeting in a fairly dimly lit room and listening to this endless presentation in an unbelievably boring monotone, seemingly no one wanting to interject anything, to interrupt with a question. No one wanted to slow the meeting down. I think no one wanted to miss their flight home or prolong the meeting a second. And as we got to the close, the then leader said, "Oh, and we've decided to recalibrate management wages both in Montreal and Geneva, and so we've used an expert firm on the subject, and they have used Geneva wages and cost of living indexes to determine how much people in Montreal and Geneva will receive in pay increases." Now, I was living in Montreal at the time, and I didn't want to delay the meeting's end either, but I had to put up my hand. I said, surely the cost of living and wages in Montreal are considerably lower than Geneva, and doing this will very inappropriately skew to the benefit of those in Montreal what they're compensated by. To which there was a silence, and people kind of looked down and shuffled their feet around, and the answer came, yes. And then we moved on and the meeting ended. So that's what Giovanni walked into. But by our next meeting, Giovanni's first, it was truly palpable that change was in the air. As Shaking the Skies delves into, this was not only about getting an industry that made money for everybody in the food chain, but the airlines to stand up for itself and to do it with one voice, but this was also about efficiency. The push for efficiency not only included a radical restructuring of IATA's organization itself, including its people, systems, and facilities worldwide, but also included critical industry-wide pushes like e-ticketing and air traffic control optimization. Often in this story, that people needed to be led to a clearly correct place, even without a true consensus, and overcoming that word dreaded by so many, change, is apparent. No story could more clearly illustrate this than the section involving the end to paper tickets. Beyond leadership, though, another key Giovanni trait that comes through in Shaking the Skies is his capacity to say or shout what others only dare think. This comes out clearly in his stories of battling natural monopolies, like air traffic control operators and airport authorities on issues, especially runaway costs. In the case of Tokyo's Narita Airport, the color visuals of a hometown airline CEO making a sudden, unplanned overseas trip when Giovanni arrives to speak. And when he speaks, several rows of Japanese government officials getting up mid-speech and walking out of the room brings a smile to my face. But nothing like the chuckle in the case of one that was far closer to home for me, which was when Giovanni came to Canada to chastise the then Minister of Transport and the airport general manager at Toronto for the absurdity of their handling of our key Toronto hub's fiscal affairs. Giovanni proclaimed on a national morning TV show that he wanted to see them both gone. And true to form for Giovanni, within a few months, an election was called, and the Minister of Transport was gone, and not soon thereafter, the airport GM was gone, and sure enough, shortly thereafter, Narita Airport charges began to come down. With stories like this, you can't help but to love the fellow, and people do. I know the Milton family loves Giovanni, but I have a non-book story to relate that illustrates this. The Icelandic volcano eruption in 2010 had shut European airspace. We were at a very nice hotel in Hong Kong, and we couldn't get home, but we were trying, and we were coming up with all sorts of elaborate routings to get back. When my daughter, then 13, called out, "Look, it's Giovanni," as if Justin Bieber had just come onto the television. We hustled in to watch, and my wife let out a, "Giovanni, save us," as if calling on Superman to intervene. Giovanni, standing on the perimeter, being interviewed at Heathrow Airport, ranted on screen about the silliness of the airport airspace closure. And the segment ended. But when it did, I have this funny feeling Giovanni ran into a phone booth, donned his super gear, flew up into the skies with a giant vacuum cleaner, and sucked all the volcanic dust out because, yet again, within 48 hours, we were on an airplane heading back to Europe. Folks, Giovanni is a man who will never need to worry about whether he made a difference, because he has, and he did it in an arena that affects our world. He's also a good man, a kind man, a smart man, and a man I am very pleased to be able to call my friend, I wish you and Elena and your new book, Shaking the Skies, all the best of every success.